You're listening to the School of Hard Knock Knocks podcast with me, Maury Morgan.
Ladies and gentlemen, your next comedian.
Shouldn't drink on an empty head, you know that, don't you?
That is the shittiest heckle I have ever heard in my life.
Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it.
What's a bucket list?
You have dangerously underprepared yourself for the shit that is about to get real.
It's a paradox, but some of the best comedy can come from difficult and challenging times. This has certainly been the case for Doug Chappel. Born on the metaphorical wrong side of the tracks and witnessed to crime and abuse firsthand, Doug was able to focus his attention on the lighter side and is now one of Australia's busiest comedians. In this School of Hard Knock Knocks podcast episode, we discuss Doug's relationship with the notorious Mark Chopper Reid, performing at over 20 Melbourne International Comedy Festivals, and surprisingly, why getting out of Melbourne during the festival can help not hamper a comedy career. Doug shares a lot of gold in this interview, and if you'd like to get personally coached by Doug Chappel himself, then sign up for the September 10 to 14 stand-up comedy course in Geelong. You'll receive personal one-on-one coaching, perform alongside Doug Chappel himself, and create a solid 5-minute set that will kickstart your comedy career. Spots are limited, so be quick. And now here he is, Doug Chappel. Good morning, Doug. How are you?
Hi, Maury. How are you?
You sound a bit croaky. You, like every great comedian, you get up late?
Yeah, mate. Just woken up, so it's 10:30. Still early for me in the morning. So
yeah.
Yeah,
a tough lifestyle of a stand-up.
Yeah, it should clear up the more I talk. So.
Oh, good. We'll get those frogs out of your throat over the next 10 questions or so.
Yeah.
Well, Doug Chappel, of course. It's great that you're on the line. You've done all the circuits, and we'll learn a bit more about your background in this interview. I want to go back, way back. I want to go back to that first stand-up comedy gig. Maybe it was I assume it was a open mic, but it may have also been a 21st birthday presentation or a wedding best man speech. When was the first stand-up gig you ever gave?
Okay, well, yeah, it's a little bit of both, really. The one I actually count is the first one I did like at an open mic, but there were times when I was sort of younger and stuff. I never really expected to be a comedian. There's nothing I actually aspired to be. But now when I look back at it, there were times when I was at parties, I got up and, want to tell jokes or I'd tell stories and, at parties and, things like that. So, but the first one I sort of count was, I was at the Esplanade.
Yep.
When the SB used to run SB comedy on the Sundays, and I was just there with some friends having a few drinks, and my friends go, "You should try something like that." And because I had a couple of drinks, I've gone, "Yeah, I could do that.
Yeah,
right. No problems at all." And they go on, you wouldn't do it. I say, of course I would. So then I found the promoter.
Yep.
And so then he began to getting up and doing some of that, didn't know what you called it, just doing some funny stuff.
Yep.
And he said, "Oh, you've done any comedy before?" I went, "Yeah." He goes, "Whereabouts?" I went, "Adelaide." So he goes, "Where are you sitting?" I said, "Over there." He said, "Oh, well, so if someone doesn't show up," and walked over and he said, "You're first up." So that's how I started.
Oh. Wow.
And
wow, how old were you back then?
I was probably early 20s then, and
yep.
And it's amazing because it wasn't something I used to like acting, but comedy was not something that I didn't sort of sit there and say, "Yeah, this is what I do." I used to like comedy, and something I watched and said, "Oh, it looks like fun." But when I got up on stage and did that first gig, I just sat there and said, "Man, this is what I want to do. I love this." So when I got off stage, I'm like, where's more of these rooms? Where can I do more of this? So I just loved it.
Did you have a set? Did you have something in your back pocket?
No.
What did you get? What did you do up there?
I just told sort of stories and jokes that I would sort of tell in the car or told, we spoke about beforehand.
Yeah.
So, when I got up there, I just, said the stuff that we were talking about in the car on the way up.
Yeah, right. Right.
And, and I thought it was brilliant. I said, "Hey, how good's this?" And when I watched they actually recorded that gig, and when I watched it back, I've gone, oh. Years later, I've gone, oh, yeah, it wasn't that good. But at the time, I thought I was great.
Yeah. Well, your mates were there, so they would have been supporting you, right?
Yeah, they weren't really supportive, but
sort of. No, they weren't.
It's funny because as sort of my friends sort of did at the time was you sort of like you knock each other, you joke around with each other and stuff. And I don't think anyone ever thought I'd do it seriously, like later on. So it's pretty weird to sort of see friends I hadn't seen for a while, and now this is what I do. This is what I've done pretty much my whole life now.
Well, the SB has been the trigger for a lot of stand-up comedians. It's a shame that currently it's all boarded up. I don't know what's happening with it at the moment. So comedy's going to suffer. Yeah, absolutely. It's, it was really like every Sunday I'd actually go there, even if I wasn't on. Because everyone used to just go there. It was great. You sort of, you'd sort of be hanging out backstage with people that you used to watch on TV and, the sort of the middle bracket acts, and it was really good. Yeah, right. So going back into your background, and of course comedy, and the people that listen to this podcast are up-and-coming comedians. They're people who are doing the open mic circuit, or they're people just about to start out in comedy and thinking, I'm going to give it a go. You talk a lot about your upbringing, your life. You're from the western suburbs that we know. You're a Footscray supporter, I believe. Yeah. And you're a big, passionate Footscray supporter. And you talk a lot about your background. Now, if I can be very direct, very early in this interview, you have somewhat of a troubled past of sorts. Tell us more about that and how it comes into your comedy. Yeah, well, it's funny. It's, people sort of, I've seen, like when I do sort of interviews in papers and stuff, people sort of like, will label things like different things. For me, my life growing up was just my life, because that's, that's all you know, sort of thing. But as I sort of got older, and you realise when you're with different people that, different people live sort of different lives, things become, sort of, you sort of then go, oh, maybe, my life may be a little bit strange or unorthodox at times. But I grew up in the western suburbs. I grew up in flats in Footscray. We have like a lot of money. There's a lot of sort of crime around the sort of the environment I grew up in. So a lot of sort of family and friends that been involved in sort of, different sort of, illegal activities. There was a lot of abuse of like, alcohol and drugs in the environment I was in, a lot of sort of violence and that as well. So, to say you sort of grow up, and one thing that sort of I'm sort of passionate about as well, because I've just finished uni now doing psychology, but I've also got a degree in youth work as well. I used to be a youth worker a couple of days a week. Okay, it's sort of stopping that cycle of like continuing, because I've watched sort of like both my sisters had partners very similar to like my dad. One of my brother-in-laws, he's disappeared, presumed murdered. Brother-in-law, he's had trouble with, getting locked up, and, so you watch that sort of cycle sort of continue. Luckily, my nephews and nieces are, doing really well at the moment. So, that's really good. But you just don't like seeing that sort of cycle sort of continue. And no. Yeah, so it's sort of, and most people sort of, I grew up with stuff, when they're younger, they're like sort of bright kids, they're smart kids. And just as time goes on, they get with the wrong groups, and all of a sudden, their lives sort of take a sort of a turn for the worst sort of thing. So, one of those people you've been associated with, and I'm just using this loosely from reading other articles, with Mark Chopper Reed. Yeah. What could you go into detail about that? Yeah. Did you know him personally, or was he someone you'd have over for a drink, or? Yeah, no, I know him. I knew Chopper quite well. We used to do shows together. So we used to do like tours and shows together. Right. But he knew my dad like years ago as well, and I did meet him when I was like a young kid, when he was out at a certain period of his life, because he was in and out a lot. But when I was younger, I didn't have like much to do with him or anything like that. He just contacted me about doing some shows. And we did the shows together. The more I spent time with him, that's how I knew. I found out more about him. He already knew like me beforehand and stuff. Yeah, right. But he was, he was interesting. Yeah. Does any of that life get into your comedy? I do a routine. There is one routine I do on him. But with Chopper, I could only treat people how they treat me. And when I actually did the gigs for him, I used to get a lot of like people would send me messages, and they would complain about me doing gigs with him, and
But, I'm a comedian, I'm working and I can only treat people how they treat me. And he was always great to me, another time I had to leave from a gig to go to another gig. So I said, I'll drive up by myself. And when we pulled over, he pulled over behind me and gave me money for petrol. Right. And I said, no, it's all right because, I chose to drive up myself. And, but he was like that. He sort of looked after me, always asked how my family was. Around me, he's always really, really good. So I can only treat people how they sort of treat me sort of thing. When I did shows, he'd always sort of, if there was like extra people at the show, he'd give me like extra money for doing the gig and he'd always like thank me. And when people just like criticise me for, but you're always going to get that. You get criticism. I did gigs for the troops and I got criticised. Mm-hmm. It was, I felt very sort of honoured to be asked by the troops to go do the gig, and then you get people, that will inbox you or on different comments, write different things about like, we'll make things political and make it about like the war and, all these sort of different things. So you're going to part of sort of doing comedy and stuff, you will get criticism. You have to sort of look at yourself and sit there and say, well, am I cool with what I've done? And, it's like the gigs with Chopper. It's, for me, the comedian, I'm just a comedian. And the rest of the people on the bill, they've all got history. They've all got past. So even when I do gigs with other people, I'll do gigs with other comedians that I know that, have got criminal records and something, or they've done something, or they're doing something that's not always positive. Yep. So, as long as people sort of aren't doing that now, and I feel like, then you got to give people second chances, I think, sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. This interview is number 22 in the School of Hard Knock Knocks podcast. And if the listeners have listened to some of the other interviews in this list, I won't point out to anyone in particular, but having baggage seems to be a prerequisite to becoming a stand-up comedian. Yeah, well, I think, when I was watching like comedians when I was younger, I liked watching people that had sort of more sort of colourful lives, interesting lives. Yeah. And that's what gets me with, that's just a personal thing for me. I like watching people and find a little bit about them on stage. Yep. There's other comedians, when you sort of meet them off stage, they're completely different people. Yep. And it's almost like an act on stage. Once I sort of see that, I can't get into the act because I know it's sort of fake. I like to see a little bit of the person being real on stage, because that's what I like to, for me personally, I like watching, I like sort of getting lost in that character, and that person gives me a little bit of insight into their world. Yeah. So what do you think of Heath Franklin's version of Chopper Reid? I just did a gig with Heath only, I think, last week. Like, I think it's funny. I think it's hilarious. Chopper didn't like it. No, I heard he actually confronted Heath. Chopper confronted Heath in quite a rough way. Yeah. He told me like lots of times he didn't like it at all, and he didn't like the fact that like he was making a living off like his name sort of thing. But like he's a nice enough guy, and I think the first time I seen the Chopper impersonation when he was doing the weather, I just thought it was hilarious. But again, if I had to choose like a character or someone, I've seen like Heath do the Chopper impersonation a few times and stuff. I've never seen him just do himself on stage. All right. But I do like seeing people, being themselves on stage and, getting a bit of insight into sort of their world. So it's like I was talking to some of the new comics the other day. And people say, I don't want to talk about like, I don't want to get sort of, because people get caught up in this sort of, being a hack. I don't want to be a hacker. I don't want to talk about, if I'm from a different sort of country, I don't want to be, talking about being from that. But that's part of you, And I said, sometimes when people in the crowd, they're interested to find where you're from and, what that background's like. What's it like growing up in that background? I said, it's interesting for people. I said, I understand you don't want to just be, just do the whole routine on it. You don't have to. I said, but to, not talk about it at all, you know what I mean? People the whole time are going to be, sort of wondering, elephant in the room. Yeah, what it was like to grow up like that. Yeah. What it was like to, So I said, it's nice to
let people know, I think anyway, where you're from, what it was like, and, you don't have to base your whole routine around it, but to just ignore it because you're worried about what other comics are going to say. Yeah. I don't know. It's just that's just my personal view anyway.
Yeah, no, that's good advice for a lot of comedians starting out, they go to open mics, and 90% of the people in the audience at open mics are other comedians who are doing open mics. So you can fall into that trap of just writing jokes to appeal to other comedians.
Yeah, and I think what it does is, I think it sort of it doesn't make well-rounded comics. Because I was at an open mic room a few weeks back, and I was watching one of the comics on stage. Now, being a comedian, you like different acts because you see the same sort of acts all the time. So if someone gets up and does something quirky or silly, you love it because it's just something different. So it really gets your attention. But that doesn't mean an audience will love it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So when I was watching this act, all the comedians laughing their heads off at this act. And I book acts as well for functions. And I was watching this act, and in my head, I'm sitting there saying, he's getting a great response from all the comedians. But I was watching the audience, and they were sort of a little bit lost. And in my head, I was thinking, how would I book this act? Where could I, like when I get asked from a uni or a corporate function or a sporting club or, just a comedy venue, where could I put this person in? And it would have been really hard. Even at a uni, you'd have to put in some sort of like some festival fringe part where, we're sort of, just a little bit strange or weird because it'd be very hard to capture an audience. It was just too sort of, I don't know, just, a little bit crazy. Yeah. So, you do have to sort of refine stuff that it's great to make your friends laugh, but you want to be watching the audience as well. Yeah. And not lose that audience. So, yeah, right. Yeah.
So what about you then? So how do you generate content? How do you develop new jokes?
Personally, I just do it from life. It's funny because I've been asked this question a few times, and I said I don't write anything down, and I'm lucky enough that I get a lot of gigs, so I have the opportunity to try stuff. Every time I've got an idea, I can try it pretty much either that night or the next night. But I was cleaning out my garage and I found boxes of material that I actually wrote down and on napkins and stuff. So I did write. It's only sort of in the later years when I've had a lot of gigs and uni and stuff, I think I just stopped writing because I've always had the opportunity to sort of get on stage and practice stuff and learn stuff. And the stuff that a lot of material I actually forget. I probably should start writing stuff down or recording it or something. Because I'll do it and I'll forget, and then someone will bring it up, and I'll say, how do they know how that routine goes anymore? And they'll tell me, and I'll go, gee, I'll have to, bring that back out. But what I like to do is just if something happens, like I could be in the car, watching TV or something, I'll have an idea. I'll start to work a little bit in my head, and I'll say, I'll try that tonight, and then on stage, I'll start to develop it. So I'll start to do it on stage. There's a routine I'm doing at the moment that I'm sort of working on stage where I'll, just start off as one joke, and now I'm sort of adding little things to it. And so every time I do it, I'll add something new to it. If it doesn't work, I'll take it out. If it works, I'll sort of add to it and so I'll start to develop it live almost.
Yeah. Are you writing this verbatim? Is this written down in a book or pieces of paper?
No.
Or is it just in your head at this point?
Just in my head, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So, which I really shouldn't do. It's probably not good advice to give people. You should be writing it down. I was just saying, because sometimes I'll get off stage and go, that was great, and I forget what I've actually had. So it would be a good idea to write stuff down. But I've just been so busy the last few years, it's hard to sort of find the time to, you come off stage, where's a pen? And then when I was younger, I'd stuff down, there'd be pieces of paper everywhere. So you got to find a place to put all these pieces of paper. But I think that's the way I sort of would do material. And that's the thing I tell new comics too. Some people want to get their material perfect before they get up on stage and do that first gig. I have comic double. People saying, I want to do comedy and stuff. I run a routine. It's not ready yet. It's not ready yet. I think when you start off, the main thing is just getting up on stage.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Because whatever you've written down, it might be fantastic on paper, but as soon as you do it, that's how you find out.
Yep.
That's where you find out where to change things in material. Because when you do it on stage, you don't know what it's on a piece of paper. When you start doing it, you start to sit there and say, gee, I thought it'd get bigger laughs, but it didn't. But, so I'll cut that out. Or you'll say something you don't even think's funny, and it gets a big laugh. And you go, oh, keep that in.
Yeah, right. So you've done, so obviously you've done the whole gamut of comedy. You've travelled overseas as well. You've done, I believe, the US and the UK as well, and of course all over Australia. And I believe you've done about 20 Melbourne International Comedy Festivals. Is that right? Yeah,
I've done a few.
So yeah, that's a lot. So how does going from doing a solid 20 minutes or a solid 15 to 20 minutes that to actually having your own branded show, which could go on for 45 minutes or longer? What goes through your head in writing something as dense and as broad as a comedy festival show?
Well, all the shows have been different. So each one of them sort of, there's a different sort of take. I've even done shows for where I've been with other people as well. So as a collective, we've sort of written a full show. I've done sort of sketch comedy festival shows. I've done stand-up ones. I've done. I've been thinking about doing one next year. Just a bit of a story about my life, sort of thing. So it's. Right. Yeah, it depends on what sort of angle you want to take with your festival show. But again, it's like everything. It's pretty much writing and trying stuff out and, seeing what works. And just before the festival, you'll have a lot of comedians, popping into, well-known comedians popping into open mic rooms and different rooms, just trying out material to see what works and what doesn't work. So it's that sort of trial and error sort of thing. So, but that's basically, it in a nutshell, so you write stuff down and then you test it.
That's it. And
then when you think it's ready, you do it. But no one's ever ready for a festival. Everyone writes a show and right before the festival, people, it's pretty much, you got to go in with a festival. Well, most times you do have to go in with some of the material that's a bit blind because you just don't have time to test everything. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Do you, is that common? So you meet sort of afterwards, after the first maybe couple of days, the comedians are sitting around the coffee shop in the morning, the next day sort of going, oh, crap, this isn't working? Or
yeah, I've been doing comedy 20 years and I've seen it for pretty much 20 years. Where you get both sides. People sort of sit there and go, "I thought the show was going to be great," and this isn't working, or the crowds aren't coming, or you'll have people sit there and go, "Oh, I wasn't expecting to be this good," So it's an interesting time for comedians comedy festival. Yeah, right. Personally, I'm not a huge fan. I think it's great for Melbourne and Victoria, but for comedians, I don't think it's for us. It's a little bit. It can actually sort of suck away our regular sort of income sometimes.
Right. I guess it's one of those things. It's a tick in the bucket list of stand-up comedy. You've got to get it done so you can say you've done it. Yeah, it's a nice addition to your resume.
Yeah, but I think that's what sort of like the festival, they have sort of different acts that they'll sort of. People will promote and, different agencies will have different acts, so they get them sort of, lots of gigs at good venues and stuff like that. And then you got the rest of the comedians, which are a mixture of, different comics, and you'll have probably 400 shows of people that have only done, a handful of gigs.
Yes, that's right.
So you got all these shows that people are competing for, and then you got professional comedians. I do this 12 months a year. So then all of a sudden during that month, people think that's the only comedy there is. So just before the festival, people don't go out to a lot of comedy shows because they say, oh, we'll hold it for the comedy festival.
Yeah, that's right.
And then afterwards, people sort of all festivaled out. So they don't want to see comedy. So sort of when you're doing it for your livelihood as a comedian, and the festival doesn't really support professional comedians. It supports sort of their sort of acts or their sort of their ones, and do a lot of stuff to promote sort of Melbourne and stuff, which is all good. But when you're a pro act, you're sort of sitting there saying, where's our gigs?
Yeah, right. So in that sense, do you balance between the public comedy gigs that you do where punters come on their own and corporate stuff?
Yeah, well, what I've learned is, and this is what because I used to do a show every year, But what I've learnt is that, you know, you're doing a show. When you're doing a show, you sort of you're struggling against, like, you know, 500 other shows. You know, you got to go out flyering, ticketing, and stuff like that. So you got a month, and you're working so hard to get people in. And some nights you have like 10 people come into your show. You got to pay registration. Everyone's got to pay registration for the festival. So you're already behind on money. Then you got to pay for like posters and you know, advertising and all that. So you can be a few $1,000s down before you even start. Then you got 10 people coming to your show, and you're like, oh, I'm making no money tonight. And then someone ring you up and say, oh, look, I got this corporate gig for like good money. You're like, I can't, I've got to go to my show. And then you walk up and there's 6 people. Right. You're like, oh God. So what I do now, that's why I stopped doing shows. You know, I said to sit there, and I'll either go on tour somewhere. So I'm working every night, making money in another state. Or I'll, if I do a show, I'll just do like pop in for friends and jump up for friends or help friends out, or do a show early on the week. So I'm open for corporate gigs and that, because most comics are booked. So you know, I get agencies that I've never heard of before ring me up and they're going, oh, we're really struggling to get a comedian. Can you do it? Like, yeah, I can do it. So that's how I do it now. So I find now actually I do it right out of festival, but you know, you have to be a little bit sort of. Yeah,
that's very smart. That's very smart. Everyone's looking. Yeah, everyone's over on the right of the stage, and you're in the left by yourself. Cleaning up. Well, that's wise. Well, on that topic, what do you have lined up for if people want to see you in the next coming weeks or months?
I do a show every Tuesday night at the Comics Lounge in North Melbourne. It used to be Monday, but it's hiatus at the moment for winter. So the Tuesday nights, at the end of the show, I do like live phone pranks. Okay. So it's a little bit different. Yeah, well, different for the comedy venue. Yeah, and where I get people in the audience, they give me some of their numbers of their friends and that, and we'll ring them live and have fun with them. And we always have guests and that as well. But this time of year, I've got a movie that just finished it off as well. So I'm one of the main characters in the film.
What's that movie? Has it got a working title?
Yeah, it's called The Reunion.
Reunion, yeah.
Yeah, it's called The Reunion. I think they're changing the name. I can't remember the name they're changing it to. But that's what we started off as. And but that's with Henry Chang, and he's the director of it. Yep. So I think it's been going for about a year, but we've got about 3 days left.
Yeah, right. What's the premise of that? Without giving too much away, what's the premise?
Yeah, it's about a guy missed his high school reunion because of his boss. His boss is like a real sort of, I don't know, asshole. Can I say that?
Yeah, you can say it. You can say worse if you want.
So he missed his high school reunion because I've just, I'm the boss. I play twins in it. I'm actually the guy's best mate and the boss. And the twins are there's like an evil twin and a good twin.
Oh, right.
But then later on in the film,
do you have a body double so that you can have the back of their head talking to you?
There is time. It's bizarre because when they first said it to me, I said, I don't know if it'll work. You know, I said, look, I'm happy to do it if you think it can sort of work and stuff. And he said, oh, look, we'll do a film. We'll do like a clip and we'll see what we all think. And we did this clip where I'm actually talking to myself. Mm-hmm. And it was amazing. I'm just talking to myself, and there's people walking in the background. Yep. And it's really cool. And people, even though I'm the same person, people didn't know which one. Like I said, I was saying to my family, I said I didn't know which one I am. They're going, yeah, of course, you're that one. I didn't realise it was both was me. So it was pretty cool.
So your family didn't realise that you don't have a twin?
Yeah, they just pointed to the because it's funny because you've. There's no sound, so it's just me. With the first clip I showed them, was no sound. It was just me talking to me, and the thing before the sound got put through. And so they pointed to the person that's more direct towards the camera because you just don't expect to think it's both people, But it did look very natural, like you're just talking to someone, like in the street. So so it came out pretty good, but.
Oh, well, I look forward to seeing it, and particularly that scene.
Yeah, so
see if it's right.
Yeah, so it's I get to play sort of a bad guy and a good guy, which is fun.
Yeah, very good, very schizophrenic. So if people want to get hold of you, if people want to book you for a show, corporate gig, for example, during the comedy festival, that's the best time to get him because he's the only guy available. How do they get in contact with Doug Chappel?
People contact me through like different agencies, and even for like the comic sans, people contact me sometimes as well. Yep. But what I find lately, most people just contact me through Facebook.
Yep.
So a lot of people now just find you on Facebook and send you a message, and So I also saw you at a gig 3 years ago. You interested in come down?
Yeah, right.
So, yeah.
Well, there you go. So we'll put a link on the show notes underneath this podcast for anyone who would like to get in contact with Doug Chappel. And so, Doug, thanks very much for sharing your insights into your last 20 years as a stand-up comedian, starting at the ESPY and then doing tours with Mark Chopper Reed. It's been very, very valuable. I think the people listening to this podcast will get a lot out of it.
Yeah, no, it's been a fun, interesting life. You get to travel a lot. You get to work with different people. Well, not just like Chopper. I've worked with sort of some pretty amazing people. Even that time with like where you say with the ESPY, just backstage at the ESPY, there used to be like when I started, there's people like they were relatively unknown at the time, but like Rose and Dave Hughes, and they were there every week too, just hanging out backstage. So yeah, it's been interesting watching everyone's career grow as well.
Well, cheers, mate. Well, Doug, thanks very much, and I look forward to meeting you and having a beer with you soon.
No problems, Murray. Thanks for having me.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.